welcome to episode 8 of the Old Man and the CV podcast. Thank you so much for your continued support to all the great content we've had so far, and don't worry, there is lots and lots more to come. So, without any further ado, let's get on with episode 8. So we're delighted to be joined by Simon Williams for this episode. Simon is a freelance producer and director of television and has over 20 years experience producing, directing and shooting documentary and factual entertainment for major broadcasters, spanning natural history, science, adventure travel, observational documentary and factual entertainment. During that time, Simon has hoisted Sir David Attenborough up a tree when he was in his 80s and helped Steve Backshall launch his TV presenting career. Simon, welcome.
Hello, Andy. Well, thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. Can you just tell our listeners a little bit more about what you've worked on during your career to give some background?
I worked on quite a lot of nature series. The biggest one I worked on was called Life in the Undergrowth. It was a David Attenborough, one of his life series. And I traveled all over the world with him. I worked on a very big series, which we did in conjunction with the ABC in Australia. Those big series are great because you get to travel, but they're quite slow. So I was quite keen to work on things like Springwatch, and I did end up doing that. So I did some antiques programs. I worked on Flog It. I worked on Bargain Hunt. I worked on just directing a presenter day in, day out and get those skills right. And then they let me work on Springwatch after that.
Our listeners feel that their age is sometimes a barrier, but tell us about your experience working in what is perceived as a young person's industry and some of the benefits that you've actually brought to that younger generation because of your industry experience.
Yeah, well, I always had an exit plan. And because I do think that unless you're going to rise in the ranks and go into sort of quite senior management, sort of that more senior executive role, which, I wanted to travel and see the world. I didn't particularly want to go and sit in a boardroom. That was just not me at all. And I knew I was quite good at communicating. And what I found, so I decided I was going to go into teaching. And I kind of had a plan, really. I did quite a lot of work for the Beeb anyway as outreach. They sent me to Central Asia with a cameraman to teach digital camera and digital editing skills. Really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed interacting with other people and sort of having to design some sort of course. I just did it off my own back, really. And using that, I started teaching at the University of West of England in sort of just odd workshops, really. Just designing stuff that they could use. But what I found now, of course, now I'm working with much younger people who want to go into the business, and that's what I'm doing now. So I work for a company called boomsatsuma, who've just won a very big award actually last night, and we are very, very industry facing. So our courses are designed really to gain practical experience. We work in like we're working here in the Botyard studios. We have very big productions going on here. Some of them we're not allowed to talk about because we all sign NDAs. But we've got big streaming services here, Netflix, Disney, you name it. They're all here doing stuff. So they get that exposure, and I work very hard to try and get people to come in and talk to them about the job, and it works. They come in, and just the other day we were over the BBC doing a big production opposite, and they allowed us in. The series producer came into the classroom and talked about his job, how he got his job, what it's like working in the industry, and what they need to do. So I found that my experience and my contacts have really, really helped young people in that respect, really.
So did you have to overcome almost this barrier that in you go as a teacher? So you transition from being a documentary maker into a teacher.
Yeah, I had to get qualifications.
And then all these young people turn up going, what's this old bloke doing here? What can I learn? So how did you overcome that so that they suddenly start going, hang on a minute, this Simon knows what he's talking about?
Just by showing them that I know what I'm talking about, really. And I can tell you the transition for me was, so I was working at the University of West of England just running workshops, and the guy who ran an MA in natural history, And he got me into these workshops, and I said to him, I said, Pete, how do I do this full time? Come on, you can help me, because you know what it's like. It's time to get out. And yeah, and I remember him saying, Simon, you need a qualification. So we talked through all these options, and we decided the best thing for me to do, because I had a scientific background, was to do a PGCE in science, and because it was free, and the government paid me to do it. So I kind of cheated, really. I had to go back to school for 10 months of my life.
But now a quick word from our sponsors. Quick Brown Fox PR leverage their unique blend of journalistic experience and cross-industry learnings to enable them to focus on lighting up your brand. They generate earned media in mainstream, national, B2B, trade, and specialist press. So if you need a nimble, agile, and dynamic agency that jumps over those lazy dogs of PR, then get in touch with Quick Brown Fox PR today and light up your brand, whatever your industry. Their details are in the episode notes. So you transitioned.
Yeah.
You've gone back to school. You've got another education.
Yeah.
You're using this in your everyday life. And what about the communication style? Do you have to adapt slightly because of this younger generation that's listening to you?
I'm lucky because I've got a daughter, and I've got nephew. Because I've got a family with younger people in it, I wasn't afraid of young people.
So going through these changes with that, vast experience of being in one field on multiple projects.
Yeah.
You come in, you transition, you get educated, you're dealing with a new audience, you're dealing with new employees of a different generation, you're showing your worth and your value to them.
Yes.
What would you say would be the key takeaway that you would impart to our listeners that you've learned in your different stages of your career, but especially now?
You definitely have transferable skills, and you definitely have loads more experience than you think you have. And that's weird. I mean, you think, of course, everybody, when you're inside looking out, you don't think, you just think you're you and you're in this situation. But when you go somewhere else and you suddenly realize, oh, right, I know, wow, I've got all these contacts and experience, and I have to use that. So that's how I saw it happening, really. And it's actually worked out how I wanted it to work out. Looking at all the education providers, this was the company I knew I had to work for, because they were growing really fast. They're really groundbreaking, very industry facing. I didn't think I stood a chance, because I did feel too old. I totally did. And I remember going, into the interview, just everyone looked so, apart from the bloke who owned the place. I was older. But I just think they kind of got me. That was it.
I think that proves that the hunger doesn't diminish as you get older, and you want to learn.
Not at all. No.
And I think your line about you have a lot of transferable skills, although you may not be aware of it.
You don't feel it, yeah, absolutely.
Probably a great title for this week's podcasts. So on that note, I will say, Simon Williams, documentary maker, thank you very much indeed for joining the Old Man and the CV podcast this week.
Thank you very much, and it's been an absolute pleasure.
Well, great news. There's time for a dad joke this week as well. This is courtesy of the Dad Joke Man on Twitter. Here we go. A coachload of jazz musicians has just overturned on the M25. Expect lengthy jams. Well, that's it for episode 8 of The Old Man and the CV. Thank you for listening. Thank you to my special guest, Simon Williams, documentary filmmaker and now teacher at Boomsatsuma. Simon and Boomsatsuma's details will be in the episode notes. Thank you for listening. Please keep sharing, please keep following, and please keep enjoying. Just time for a couple of quick credits. For the music and idents, Abigail Eva Lee Wand. This is an Almost Pro production for 23 Magic, copyright 2023. See you next week, Santiago amigos.